Hello and welcome to A Book in 5 Minutes with me, Lindsay Milner. This week's book is called The Big Fat Surprise and it's by Nina Teicholz. She is a food and nutrition journalist with a degree in biology and is US based. Now, if you're anything like me and many other women throughout the world, especially the Western world, you have been indoctrinated in the belief that saturated fats are bad for us, they're bad for our heart, they're bad for our health, and we've tried to follow a low-fat diet in order to lose weight and stay healthy and live longer. So the subtitle for this book, Why Butter, Meat and Cheese Belong in a Healthy Diet, is obviously quite an intriguing one. So I figure that healthy eating, looking after our health through diet and exercise is legitimate, and I have covered this in a couple of other books before. So I did think that this was an interesting one to cover. The book is an account of the American diet industry and health industry. She's looking particularly at the advice to cut down on saturated fats in order to maintain good heart health, keep cholesterol low, make sure we don't have cardiac events, make sure basically we don't die early of heart attacks. But because she's a journalist, obviously she's looked at this and investigated it, and the book chronicles not really her story. She does touch a little bit on her own story, but it's mostly about the scientific evidence. And she concludes that actually the evidence that low fat, low saturated fats, have polyunsaturated fats instead, there isn't actually very strong evidence that this will prevent us from dying early from a heart attack. And also it's not that helpful for other diseases such as diabetes, obesity, and cancers. It is based... It's an interesting account. It does take us through the development of, where this idea came from, that we needed to cut down on animal fat, saturated fat. But she concludes that it's actually based in flawed science, that the evidence in support of this thesis is not strong and has been sort of possibly mostly from good intentions, but that it's largely been misinterpreted, sort of taken too much at face value and not really looking at the whole bigger picture. And her view is that saturated fat is not the culprit. Low fat diets are not good for us. There's one chapter which I found actually really quite alarming, where she talks about seed oils, or vegetable oils, which is what we've been told to have instead of the butter and the cheese and the cream and the beef fat, the fatty meats. We've been encouraged to eat polyunsaturated fats, rapeseed oil, canola if you're American or Canadian, but if you're British, we call it rapeseed oil, vegetable oils, sunflower oils. She calls these toxic, that these are, they're manufactured, they're industrialised processes, they're not really natural products. And honestly, that chapter was very alarming, and I'm convinced that I felt that, that does sound toxic. I don't think I want to go there. So that's the sort of conclusion. And the other thing that she kind of touches on, but doesn't really fully develop as an argument, is that the real culprit is sugar. Sugar is the thing that causes inflammation in the body, causes obesity, causes obviously diabetes, cancers. These things are actually much worse for our health than the animal fats. So should you read the book? You do need to be sort of on board with reading sort of, you know, the history of the science, the history of the health industry. It is based in American advice, but obviously I think a lot of that just looked so familiar to me from the UK perspective as well. I think if you're worried about your health in any way, if you're worried about, you know, heart disease, diabetes, cancers, if you would like to find a successful way to lose weight, then I think this is definitely worth your time reading. It was fairly interesting. It was a little bit difficult to get into it at first, and as I say, some of the chapters are very, very scary. But I think it was well worth the time that I invested in reading it. And honestly, I'd kind of already changed my own diet towards cutting out as much sugar and carbohydrate as possible. But this just really convinced me that I was on the right lines. So that is the big fat surprise why butter, meat and cheese belong in a healthy diet, and it is written by Nina Teicholz. That's this week's book in 5 minutes. I will see you next time. Don't forget, if you want more content like this, then please do subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to give this video a like. Bye for now.